cell phones to vibrate or silent. And then let's all please stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Chris, would you go ahead and take the roll, please?
Councilmember Strebe?
Here.
Councilmember Berg?
Here.
Councilmember Dalby?
Here.
Councilmember Rowe? Councilmember Stevens?
Here.
Mayor Lazio?
Here. Before we do the consent agenda tonight, I'd like to take a point of personal privilege and call up one of our guests in the audience tonight. We have with us Mr. Bob Beisch. Bob, if you would come up to the podium, we'd like to make a few comments to you and about you to the public. For those of you who don't know, Bob Beisch has served on the Parks Board, the advisory board. So I'm just going to read this. On behalf of the council, this Parks Advisory Board, and the entire community, we want to thank you for 36 years of service to the city. This is an outstanding record of service to our community. Your interest and knowledge of our park system is outstanding and greatly appreciated. What an example you have set for others. You've been part of many changes and innovations over the years. We can hardly find a way to say thank you for the hours and the commitment you have made on behalf of the city. We trust that you will continue to make suggestions and comments on ways to improve our overall park system. Thank you again, Bob, for all you've done for our community and for our park system. On behalf of the council, Mayor Lazio. And now, Jean, if you would be good enough.
Congratulations. It's a plaque for 36 years of service to the Park Board. In the 10 years that I worked with Bob, he was very fair and honest and unbiased, so he was great to work with.
Great.
Good job.
Well, thank you. A lot has changed in our parks in 35 years, and I was proud to be a part of it all, and I enjoyed every minute of it, and I'm glad I did it all.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, Chris, if you would start with the consent agenda, please.
Okay, minutes from regular meeting number 30 on September 18th, 2018 as presented. Proclamation to designate October 2018 as National Disability Awareness Month. Acknowledgement of August financial report and payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department. Canvasser solicitor application for Knights of Columbus for the annual Tootsie Roll Drive at various businesses on September 24th, 28th, 29th, 30th, and October 2nd, 2018. Resolution number 239, 2018, approving the contract bond and certificate of insurance for the runway 1331 reconstruction project at the Ottumwa Regional Airport. Resolution number 240, 2018, setting October 16th, 2018 as the date for a public hearing on the intent to dispose of city-owned property located at 713 East 2nd Street. Resolution number 245, 2018, setting October 16th, 2018 as the date for a public hearing on the council's intent to lease city-owned property, city-owned crop ground at the Ottumwa Regional Airport. Beer and liquor applications for Warehouse Barbecue at 2818 North Court Road, East End Hideout at 1141 Orchard Street, Potros Garcia at 2804 North Court, all applications pending final inspections.
Is there a motion?
Move the consent agenda as presented, Your Honor.
Second. Thank you. Take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you. Item C, we need an approval for tonight's agenda. Is there such a motion?
Move the approval. Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Item D on our agenda, I'm going to turn over to City Administrator Andy Morris and ask him to walk us through some of those. So Andy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. And Mayor, as you and I talked about, we're probably going to play a little volleyball on this. We need to go back and forth in terms of some of the entities or items you're going to identify. The very first one, you'll see actually item 2 on there is Alex Stroda. He and I spent some time talking about the event that they would have at Sycamore Park, the Ottumwa Citizens Against Poverty. I don't believe Mr. Strode is here, Mayor, but I don't know if there are any representatives of that committee with us here this evening.
Leslie,
Okay.
are you going to represent the group?
He was supposed to be here. I never heard anything from him. Do you have any questions? It's Ottumwa community, Ottumwa Citizens Against Poverty, having a
Right.
community cookout. They're not actually cooking there. They're just inviting people. JBS has donated meat to it, so it's going to be smoked at another location, drawn onto the location. So there won't be any. So I think he's looking for sponsorship for insurance purposes.
Well, Mr., if I can address that, that was an item that the city attorney, Joni Keith, and I addressed, and quite frankly, what the staff is suggesting, and just to confirm that, is he had a question as it related to event insurance, and the city decided based on the conversation we had, that would be something that we could waive. In this instance, there was a request, as I recall, to use the restrooms at the beach. That's not something that we want to see happen. But as it relates to the event insurance, staff is suggesting we provide a waiver in this instance. That shouldn't be that much of an issue. If should he show up a little bit later, that's a council decision whether or not you want to hear Mr. Stroda speak. But from a staff perspective, I just wanted to confirm the waiver of the event insurance requirement.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dr. Tim. No, Mr. Mayor, I think Councilman.
Do you have a
wanted to speak.
suggested date that's going to take place?
That's October 21st from noon till 4:30 p.m. But we have reserved park from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. for setup and tear.
The last item I would add on that, Mr. Mayor, if I might, and that is we do need to get together. You probably need to talk with Gene Ratchey on this. We need to define the parameters of what portions of Sycamore Park that you're going to use. I'm sure we can get past that pretty easily, but that's something we'll need to confirm.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is Andy Wartenberg, the CVB update. I'll turn that back over to you to introduce him.
Okay. Andy Wartenberg is our director of the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and Andy has an update for us. So step to the mic, Andy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Good evening. I would just like to very quickly update you on some of our activities in the last 2 months since I was last here. I want to start with RVTV. As I think everyone here knows, we had this event here on September 7th. WHO selected us as one of the 5 cities to be featured on RVTV. I'm happy to report that this was a huge success for the community. We estimate that we had over 1,000 people come through the Bridgeview Center. We had footage. They had several live feeds and some tape feeds, well over 60 minutes, which actually translates, if you were to advertise with WHO, into well over $50,000. I think the most important footage we got was of the city, of the high school, and also of Bridgeview Center. But I want to publicly recognize a few entities. This was not just a CVB effort. I want to recognize the input of the high school who actually brought this program to the city. Mr. Mayor, I want to thank you for your help. We had help a lot from some great private sector partners, including JBS, Community First, the Ottumwa Courier. This was really the first event that I took the lead on, and it really showed me what we can do if a community comes together. So a big success for us. I think we got great feedback from the folks at WHO, and I would hope that when they consider this area again, they're going to consider us next time they come back. Go As all of you know, we have been moving forward with the reorganization of the CVB. I wanted to bring everyone up to speed on that. As you all know, I did get approval from the BVC board to dissolve the board, the CVB advisory board, and to form a new board, and I got approval from the city council to do so. I have formed a new board. We will be having our first organizational meeting next Tuesday, and we'll move forward from there. It's important to note that I still will, while I won't be reporting to the BVC board, I will still go to their meetings once a month, their board meetings, and give them an update, so keep them in the loop. I mean, there's a really strong partnership between the CVB and Bridgeview, so we want to keep that going. Okay, group sales initiative. You may remember last time I was here, I told you about the Ottumwa All-Stars program. This was a program we encourage residents of Ottumwa, if they have a club, to advocate for Ottumwa. The program's still going strong. I'm very happy to report that we have our first group as a result of that program. The Iowa-Missouri Ford Club will be coming to Ottumwa next August. We anticipate between 50 and 100 room nights, and attendance somewhere between 750 and 1,000 people. We are continuing our email blasts, of course, really targeting associations and clubs right now. Next week from Friday, I will go out and be making more sales calls. I've already been to Des Moines. I'm going to meet with meeting planners in Iowa City and the Quad Cities area. We also have developed a historical tour. We're working with Molly Nauman and Andy over at Legacy. So this is something we're now offering for groups coming to Ottumwa, complimentary historic tour. We're also working on a group sales promotion, which we will be rolling out probably January 1st. It's a harsh reality that if you want groups to come here, you have to give them some incentives to do that. And as we move forward with that, I will give you more details in our next update. We will be attending Travel Iowa Marketplace in November. That is especially strong for bus tours, and we're actually partnering with the Gothic House, and we'll be at that show. And finally, we are just starting to work on fam trips. We want to get meeting planners down here to see our community, to see the Bridgeview Center, to see what we're all about. We're hoping to have some in place again in the winter of 2019. On the leisure side, you'll remember last time we were just about finished with the Let Us Surprise You Dollars program. That has been completed. Those are in the hotels now. What you're seeing up here is actually the finished product. Those are the businesses that participated. Businesses, the response has been 50-50. We're going to decide whether we want to do it again. We've also started working with a group called Midwest Travel Network. That basically what they do is they help us host travel writers and bloggers to come here. We host them, they see the community, they write about us. You know, part of our strategy is let's create as big an external sales force as we can. Website redevelopment, we're continuing with that. We will be finalizing the design concept actually tomorrow. We're working with Neapolitan Labs on that. I did go over these steps with you last time right here. We did submit a grant to Iowa Tourism for $5,000 to cover about 75% of the cost of this. And we're looking to roll out our new website on December 1st. We continue to do our digital marketing campaign. On the left, you can see this is an email blast. This is what we call a biweekly sales blast, which really focuses on selling points for the city. I mean, this is one autumn, where to see foliage in Ottumwa and around the region. You know, we've done history, we've done the video game capital, which went out today. The other bye-week, we do an events email blast. And we obviously, you know, focus on events. For instance, one went out last week, focused on Oktoberfest, Galaxy of Gaming, Halloween-a-Palooza, the events coming up. And our reach now is up to 2,000. And on the right, you'll see we're continuing with our Ottumwa Stories, our blogging program in partnership with Iowa Tourism. Again, those are more specific, more experiential things. You know, we've done, the one you're looking at there is we did a blog on street art. And the really great thing about these is when we send these out, we do a companion Facebook post, and normally Iowa Tourism will repost it, and that goes out to about another 125,000 people. And again, digital marketing is so important, and it's so great because it doesn't cost us anything. So just to give you an example of what we're doing, I just did a little graph starting from January, and you can see we've increased our Facebook reach right there. So we will continue to do that. Okay, I did mention at the last meeting that I was working on our customer service / destination advocate program. I'm happy to tell you that will be completed next week, and it'll be ready to go out. Now, this program is going to do three things. Number one, it's going to teach businesses, residents, everybody in this community who wants to participate, basic customer service and engagement skills. Number two, it's going to teach them when you're engaging with a visitor or even another resident, how to advocate for Ottumwa. And number three, it's going to teach them some tricks on how to ask for referrals. Again, what we want to do is we want to create that virtual sales force. And again, what we are going to do is we are not going to have a seminar at Bridgeview Center. We are going to go out to businesses and do this. The training is going to be between about 45 to 50 minutes. So we're actually going to go out and do that. And we're going to do some beta testing on it in the next couple of weeks, and then we'll be able to roll it out towards the end of the month. Finally, we subscribe to Star Data, which basically gives us monthly revenue and occupancy information. And I've been looking very closely at our numbers. And as some of you may be aware, starting, say, in July of 2017, both our revenue and occupancy took a significant dip from the previous year. What you're looking at right there, I just put up January through August of this year. You can see this is revenue. Blue is 17, orange is 18. You can see, like, look at the decreases in revenue based on that Star Data. And if you look at the last few months, though, it looks like we're turning the corner. These aren't significant increases, but it looks like we're turning the corner on that. Now, some of that may be attributed to a construction project going on, but my feeling is if it's going on for a year or so, we need to reverse this. And it looks like we're starting to do that. And you can see that from the next slide as well. If you look at same days, January to August, and you look at, again, 2017 in blue, 2018 in orange, this is occupancy. And you can see the dips, and you can see for the last 4 months, our occupancy has been increased. So we're hoping to keep going with what we're doing and hoping that these numbers will continue. And I think that's all I got for you tonight. Unless anybody has any questions.
Any questions for Andy?
I just have a comment. Thanks, Andy, again for hitting the ground running. And of the 8 points that you presented to us, which are all great, I really particularly like the Ottumwa Destination Advocate program.
Me too.
That's just an excellent idea. You know, we talk about promoting Ottumwa and moving Ottumwa in a positive direction. And I think that idea is just a really good one. And thanks for coming up with that.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. We'll see you again.
Thank you, Mayor.
Item number 4 is a report from Tim Richmond, who is our Emergency Management Coordinator for Wapello County. And as you recall, he was here recently, but came back with some information which has been handed out to the council. Good evening, Tim. You have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Last time I was here, we discussed a little bit about what the Emergency Management Agency is and the legal structure makeup and how Ottumwa fits into that. And you're one of 8 political jurisdictions that I serve. Tonight, I wanted to take a little bit closer look at a specific area. And in the handout I gave you, you'll see on the front there's a color graphic, and that really kind of summarizes very succinctly the four components of an emergency management program: preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. And those are all areas that I work in all the time. Tonight I wanted to focus specifically in the preparedness phase. And preparedness really revolves around three things: planning, training, and exercise. So we develop what's called a comprehensive emergency plan, emergency operations plan. It's a 4-inch thick binder. If you're ever sleepless at night, let me know, I'll bring it to you. But really it's just a written document that articulates how we do business. We have to file that with the state and federal government. It's what makes us compliant and be able to receive funds should we need that kind of assistance. So I wanted to dive a little bit into the parts of that plan real briefly. I won't bore you too much with it, but that's pretty much what this document is going to do for us. So the countywide emergency operations plan, what is it? There's a base plan that kind of outlines in general, how do we handle emergencies and of any size, small or large or catastrophic in our community. In addition to that base plan, we dive very specifically into 15 subject areas that we call emergency support functions. And these deal with specific topics. And generally these plans are owned and driven and written by the agencies that provide these functions. So ESF number one, and this is terminology that I really want to become part of your everyday language when we have conversations about emergency planning and response. ESF is a term, it's an acronym that you're going to hear from me a lot. So emergency support functions. Number one deals with transportation. And these, you'll notice there's an ESF coordinator, and then there's primary agencies talked about, and then there's a brief little description. This is pulled directly from that larger document. Transportation deals with how are we going to deal with moving people and resources in the times of emergencies or disasters. This doesn't specifically deal with evacuations, but just how do we get people out of harm's way? How do we get resources into our community? So that's ESF 1. The primary agencies there will be our engineering and public works departments. One of the groups that I work with that deals with this specifically all the time is called a multidisciplinary safety team. And that's made up of a great number of organizations, not just from our county, but across the state. The fire department, police department, public works department, in conjunction with state departments like the DOT, Governor's Traffic Safety Bureau, local tow companies, entities of that sort. We all meet every other month to talk about ways we can improve our infrastructure and improve traffic safety and things of that nature. ESF number 2 is communications, and that deals with all things communications. So it's emergency communications, it's communications infrastructure, whether it be TV, cell phones, those types of things, because communications are important. For multiple different reasons. One, for us to be able to provide information to responders, to get information from the community, to provide emergency instructions to our public, things of that nature. Some entities that are directly involved in that, work on that all the time, are our 911 Communications Center, both at the police department, the sheriff's department, and our joint 911 service board that works on providing that infrastructure for public safety communications. 3 is public works. These are made up of our engineers and public works folks again. And these guys were active with me recently in some storms. The last rash of severe weather we had moved through. I had a community that was directly impacted with a large amount of debris. And we saw the public works departments from across the county go to Blakesburg and help them with their specific needs. And all that took was some phone calls, and that's the kind of collaborative effort that happens routinely in emergency response departments and also happens at public works. So they work on those types of things in emergencies. So clearing of debris, making sure infrastructure is not impacted, doing damage assessment, and figuring out how we can put back together the pieces of our infrastructure that might be damaged. ESF 4 is firefighting. Pretty obvious one there. It's all of our fire departments across the county. In our county, we're really lucky. We have a very active mutual aid association where all of those departments that work with fire and emergency medical services meet every quarter. They rotate around the different firehouses and they discuss best practices and work on projects that improve their operations. in their main mission of protecting life and property. ESF 5 is related directly to my agency in emergency management. The specific type of core capabilities that I'm responsible for is being good at the incident command system and assisting all of you that maybe aren't used to how that looks or how that flows. Pairing up entities together to work together, providing operational guidance, maintaining an EOC and opening that EOC when the big events happen in our community. So we have a streamlined, coordinated effort amongst all of our agencies so we can work most efficiently. The other thing I can provide is notifications to the public. There's some different platforms we have access to. One of those will be exercised tomorrow during the national test of the emergency alert system. So we've put that out in the media. You'll receive a notification over your cell phone, which we've never done that before on the national level, but tomorrow we're going to try that out and see how that works. But those type of capabilities we also can do locally for local emergencies and disasters. 6 is evacuation, mass care, housing, and human services. This is where if we have a need to move people, evacuate people, we have a massive destruction of housing, we need to shelter those people and find ways to provide them temporary housing until we can get them some assistance to fix their permanent housing. ESF 7 is resource support. This can come in many different shapes and sizes, whether it be people providing donations, us working with all the larger volunteer organizations to provide resources we need to do recovery. ESF 8 is public health and medical. Our stakeholders there are our public health department, environmental health, our medical examiner, our city and county health departments, and there's also a group called the Wapaka County Healthcare Coalition that we meet pretty regularly, and that is made up of basically a lot of different entities in the community that provide healthcare services, from public health to the hospital to care clinics, EMS, and all those different folks. And we work on a variety of different things, from talking about medical surge capacity. Should we have the big tornado, we need to take care of massive amounts of patients, or we have a flu pandemic, special needs populations, special at-risk populations, all those different types of conversations all the time about how we address those needs medically. Number 9 is search and rescue. This ESF is owned by our law enforcement communities, and this is where if we need to do a rapid deployment of resources to find people, a life-saving mission. I've invested quite a bit of time and money in supporting this operation in getting a drone operation off the ground. So I've purchased a large drone that will soon be available to be part of that. ESF 10 is hazardous materials. The stakeholders there are the Emergency Management Commission, all of our fire departments, and our Southern Iowa Emergency Response Group, our hazmat team, which is housed here in Ottumwa with our fire department. There's a lot of planning that goes into hazardous materials and knowing how to respond to that, partnerships with local businesses and manufacturing that house those chemicals, use those chemicals, that sort of thing. ESF 11 is agricultural, natural resources, and pets. Key agencies listed here are a lot of state agencies, but this is one of those ESFs that there's a lot of opportunity that we can do some things with some local groups. Pets are part of everybody's family, and that's a big challenge a lot of times in disasters when we're trying to care for people and move people and evacuate. What do we do with pets? So we need to be able to have some capacity to deal with that, and we really don't have it today. Other things we might deal with are infections or pandemics that might affect our animals and our agricultural community. ESF 12 is energy, and this is housed with our engineer's office, and this deals with basically power infrastructure and partnership with our local providers of gas and power. How do we get the power restored quickly after a major event, because that always is a big problem and concern. 13 is public safety and security. Again, this one is owned by our law enforcement community, and we've seen this at work this summer. We know that works very well. And so that is the ESF that talks about how do we maintain law and order in times of chaos. ESF 14 is long-term recovery. So this is, we do have a long-term recovery committee. Fortunately, it hasn't had to meet in quite a few years, but this is another one that's probably has some opportunities to establish a more long-term co-ed committee that deals with long-term recoveries. It's probably a good thing we haven't had them active because we haven't had any big disasters. So knock on wood. And then last 15 is external affairs, emergency public information. This is where we work with public information officers from different areas of the community and our local media to get emergency information out to our communities. And the public relies upon us in public leadership to provide them instruction on what to do to keep them and their families safe. And this is the ESF that deals with that. Recently, I've asked all of our local media partners to come together to form what I call the Wapello County Press Corps, and they were all very responsive and very on board with that concept. They are all very interested in working on that together so that they have a unified, consistent response to emergency information as we send it out to the public. And we're going to be working together on providing some pre-planned messages for certain types of disasters so we can be very timely and succinct with instructions. So that in a flash is the kind of synopsis of the countywide emergency operations plan and all the different pieces that go into that planning, all the different groups that work on that plan. And what it's really all about is to do things that build core capabilities within each of those groups to make each of those groups better and stronger at what they do, finding them resources, identifying gaps, those types of things. And for me, it's building my core capabilities so I can be better at supporting them and coordinating all the different groups when they come together to resolve those large emergencies or big disasters in our community. Any questions?
Any questions for Tim? I think it's really good that you're here and sharing with the council, and we always hope it's not going to be our community, but I think the same could be said for Marshalltown, and had a chance to visit with some of their elected officials and city manager recent conference, and you just want to be prepared and have some practice with this. You never know. So thanks for doing this, Tim, and I appreciate your enthusiasm and your cooperation with all of our people here and also in the county and the neighboring communities. Okay, we'll have you back again.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, item 5. Andy, do you want to make any comments about that? Or?
No, Mayor, I think you had that on the agenda, so I'll turn it over to you.
This past week, Wapello County, as you may recall, funded a study with the Pinnacle Sports Company, and they released their draft report. A number of our staff were present for that, as were other people in the community. We have a copy of that here at City Hall if anybody wants to see that or read it and review it. They did ask for written comments back to the principal. And so we will have some time to give that comment, and we're going to make some comments. Again, the idea was to bring the community together, look at indoor, outdoor, sporting event kind of facilities that could accommodate a wide variety of activities. This has been an area that's been looked at in the community for about 3 to 4 years, and first time we've had a professional group give us a review, and I think it was well received. There were some concerns about some things that were left out or perhaps not as much detail, but that's why it's called a draft, and they're going to ask for some written report, and they'll give a final report back to the county, and we'll get a copy of that. So I encourage anybody that's interested, and besides softball, baseball, soccer, we talked about tennis, we talked about a variety of subjects. So if you have a particular interest, please make somebody on the council aware of that, and we'll incorporate those comments into our city response. Okay, Matt, you were there. You want to make any comments?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. Anybody else that has an interest in sports not mentioned, just make sure you get a hold of one of us so we can get those comments to the right people.
Okay. Item 6, comprehensive plan, strategic planning component.
And Mr. Mayor, on that one, as you'll see, and I'll ask you to ask Kevin Flanagan to come to the podium here in a little bit, but as you know, what we're trying to wrap up with Confluence are 2 components of the strategic plan. the comp plan, the strategic plan component of that comp plan from the larger picture. And the first one is a meeting with department heads and staff, where ideas, suggestions will be generated by staff, which will ultimately come about as recommendations to council. And then, of course, council can confirm or deny or modify those. So if you see from the schedule, as far as I know, the schedule has changed rather frequently, even today. But as far as I know, is that the ink is dried on this one, and that is the initial meeting. You see the department heads. That is scheduled for the 31st of this month. It's at 1 p.m. over at Bridgeview. I think that runs plus or minus, Kevin, to 4 or 5 o'clock. The second component is a bit up in the air. So, Mr. Mayor, if it's all right, I'd ask you to invite Kevin Flanagan to come to the podium and speak to that second meeting.
Good evening, Kevin. Go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, we were trying to coordinate together with everyone so that everyone could make it to this meeting. It's very important that we're kind of all there. All staff will be there on the 31st, coming up with what we feel like are recommendations for the departments. Those 1 or 2, maybe 3 big initiatives that you would undertake in each department a year, which should coincide and reflect our in a large degree should coincide and reflect our capital improvement planning on the borrowing side. Not that all of that will be in capital improvement. Some of it could be contained within budgets, but it would be wonderful once we give those things. Obviously, there's going to be quite a bit of time for council people to look at it because we do want everybody to be there. The 10/8 date would not work, or the 12/8, I'm sorry, date would not work. We're looking at another selection of dates. So on the 31st of October, we'll complete our work on the staff level, hand it to council. You guys can be reviewing that, looking it over, corresponding with department heads, whatever you may need to do on your side of it to get where you need to be. And then January 5th, perhaps, I heard some mention of maybe doing this on a Friday instead of a Saturday. I don't know how.
That is correct. Mr. Mayor, that is correct. I think that's something, rather than going through all the dates that you could hammer out later, but you're right, a Friday has been introduced. So it may make some sense for Kevin to develop 3 or 4 dates on a Friday and then put that in front of council.
Yeah, Katie's got a lot of dates that are out there. They're on Saturdays, but I'm going to go ahead and get a few from Chris Shires, our consultant for Fridays as well, and throw those out there, and she'll be in touch with you.
I think it's going to be important that we just get a date set and go, and we'll have to go with those who are available, because there may be some circumstances where not everybody will be able to clear the certain date, but we want as much participation from council and department heads as possible. So.
Yeah, we're hoping if we can broadcast out there far enough that we could all coordinate it, and that would be great. So thank you for your patience with the process, though. And Chris did say this is not uncommon. And we had to go through a couple of dates with council members. No, it's very difficult in everyone's schedule. So thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Kevin. Andy, do you want to
Yes.
talk about 7?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, there's a couple more items. The first one you see, item 7, and that's Iowa inspector's presentation. I've shared with City Council the meeting, the League of Cities meeting that Council Member Berg, yourself, and I attended in Oskaloosa last month. And what I'm suggesting we have is a special meeting a week from this evening, as you will note there on the agenda, have that on the 9th. And that would be with Jason Van Alsdal with Iowa Inspectors. And what he will, I'll summarize this very quickly. What he operates is a firm that conducts rental inspections. So all items being equal, I want him to put a program in front of council, and council look at the merits and demerits of this. The fee that the landlords would pay would increase. I'll wait for his presentation before I go into the details. I think that's something that we should hold the landlords to a little bit higher standard on. Right now, it's a grand total of $30 a year, and I think we can go north of that and improve the quality of what we're getting. What I'm suggesting is he give that presentation, and council get back with me as your feelings and your thoughts about how we proceed on that. If this were something that council would decide we would move on, I would want to utilize some of the folks that are in that office already in code enforcement and rental inspections, perhaps move some of those down to code enforcement. But I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. Again, let's just listen to Mr. Van Osdal, and he will make that presentation. Again, a week from this evening. No votes will be taken at that meeting. It's simply an information meeting. 2 other items: the discussion of the sewer credit policy. You may recall from the previous meeting, Councilman Adalby asking us to consider a modification to that policy, and one would be to collect some of those, as the councilman indicated, some of those in between. So what I took from that in meeting with Councilman Dalby on this, that the credits would, the threshold would cut back a little bit from 20 units to 15 units. I visited with Finance Director Bob Jay. That's an item he's working on. So all items being equal, unless I'm told otherwise, plan to bring that to the next regular scheduled council meeting. And then, Mayor, finally, the last item I want to make comment on. This is another one relates to Councilman Dalby. This past Saturday, we participated, Councilman Dalby and I, in a lot clearing, let's just say, event in town where we cleared junk, trash, and debris from various lots for folks that were either financially unable or perhaps had some physical challenges that they couldn't remove. We cleared items from 2 lots. Councilman Dalby and I have done that with 2 lots previously, and that is an item that we will continue to do and get consent from the folks that state an interest. I'll say one last item. I do want to turn this over to Councilman Dalby, but a lot of this derives from an item that is on, and Kevin Flanagan can speak to this as well. There is a notice on the webpage on health and inspections that says, if you or your neighbor are aware of it, let's just say challenged property that has materials on it, please let us know. What we decided to do in this instance is we moved on a little bit quicker. We actually I went and visited personally with the folks that had a lot of this debris, and they consented to that. And hopefully it's something we'll move forward. But again, Mayor, at this point, I would pass over to Councilman Dalby, because again, he really headed up the event in terms of getting the local 74 John Deere unit together.
Councilman Dalby, go ahead.
Well, just real quickly, again, no, thank you to Administrator Morris. You did a lot of the communicating with UAW and got this set up. So again, hats off to you for this. And like Administrator Morris said, the beauty of this program is it targets, or is meant to target, some of our senior community folks and some of our lower income folks who may, through physical disability or, even veterans who are getting up there in age can't get out and abate some of these issues. We come in and we can do that quickly and be of help to some of those folks. So it's a beautiful thing, really, to get off the ground. It's something that Administrator Morris and myself have wanted to do for some time. And then, of course, the UAW has a community service committee which likes to do just that, community service. And so in talking with them, they were more than happy to jump on board, and we got a lot of good volunteers Saturday. There was 8 to 10 of us total, and we at least attempted 3. We knocked 1 completely out. And I think another member and myself are going to try to get 1 tomorrow finished up. And so not only that, if you think about it, that's 1 less property that the city and the taxpayer have to pay for to abate, because these properties will have to be eventually tagged, and then we'll have to pay a contractor to go abate them. So, it's good for the taxpayer, it's good for the people who can't do this, and it's also good for these community service committees to get some time and hours in helping their community. So again, hats off to the UAW Local Community Service Committee, Administrator Morris, and moving forward with these types of programs are good for our community.
Great.
Mayor, that's all I have, Mayor, unless you or council members have anything.
Any questions for Andy? Okay.
Thank you.
Move on to item E. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to address an issue that's on the agenda.
Alex Stroda, I'd like to apologize for my tardiness. Work doesn't always follow the schedule that we would like. So I am the founder and facilitator of Ottumwa Citizens Against Poverty. We are holding the Ottumwa Community Cookout on October 21st in Sycamore Park. And I am here to request that the council vote to have the city come on as a full partner for the event. That would specifically entail indemnifying the group as far as our insurance, because we are in process to become a 501c3. You have to actually exist for 2 years before you can do that in your own name. So we can't actually even purchase insurance. Since the event's already happening at a city park, the city insurance would already apply. So it's really not a change from the way things are currently. We'd also ask that the city direct the Parks Department to bring additional seating over to the Sycamore Park shelter. The city provide at the, I don't know what you would call it, the automated sign out here, advertisement of the event. And the beach, if the Parks Department could actually open the front of the beach during the event so that people could use those restrooms, that would prevent the need to have porta potties brought in.
Mr. Mayor, may I interrupt? If I can I speak to this for just a moment, if it's all right with the council? And now, and again, I realize we all have schedules, so you ran a little bit late, which is fine. But this was something we outlined fairly early in the meeting, and on those points, as you and I talked about, the council confirmed then waiving the event insurance. So that's been addressed. That's not an item in terms of financial burden that you would have to fix. The other items I would mention, I mentioned to the group before. I'm recommending, this is more of a staff decision. This is something council gets involved in, but I don't want to leave the beach open. I think, quite frankly, we have some problems, quite frankly, with some folks going in there that may need to use it, and some that would not. So I would recommend that we do away with that. The other item that Gene Ratchey, the Parks Director, and I spent a little bit of time talking about, we can get to this later, but that's somewhat defining the footprint in Sycamore Park, where this is going to be. But all items being equal, I think this is an item that staff supports, and I think council has endorsed as well for this first time around. But I wanted to clarify on the insurance. We're okay with that on the waiver. As to the issue of letting folks into the beach, we'll stay. We need to stay away from that. Quite frankly, that's just more hours for us. Okay.
Well, as long as you and Gene are working together with Mr. Strotto, I trust that you'll be able to handle those. Okay.
Now, I know Leslie was able to speak to you earlier due to my tardiness. Did anyone have any questions that I might be able to answer?
I don't believe there are any questions. I think she did a good job and answered.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, then thank you for your time.
Thanks, Alex. Is there anyone else in the audience? If not, let's go to item F.
Bid review and award contract for cleanup of asbestos contaminated house that was destroyed by fire located at 141 South Iowa Avenue. Recommendation: award the contract for cleanup of asbestos contaminated house that was destroyed by fire at 141 South Iowa Avenue to Dan Larson of Ottumwa, Iowa, in the amount of $9,400.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, Your Honor. The city accepted bids for 141 South Iowa Avenue until 2 p.m. September 25th, 2018. 2 bids were received. Dan Larson submitted the best bid in the amount of $9,400 for cleanup of fire debris, and staff recommends acceptance of this bid.
Any questions for Kevin? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes. Thank you.
Kevin.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the authorization of a loan disbursement agreement and the issuance of notes to evidence the obligation of the city thereunder.
Good evening, Bob. You have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, a public hearing is required prior to the authorization and issuance of a loan disbursement agreement. This will be an SRF loan that will cover the planning and engineering costs for Division 2 and beyond of Phase 8.
Any questions for, first of all, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to address this? Okay. Have any comments, Bob, in your office? Okay. All right. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you, Holly. Take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Resolution number 244, 2018, instituting proceedings to take additional action for the authorization of a loan and disbursement agreement and the issuance of not to exceed $3.9 million in sewer revenue capital loan notes. Recommendation: pass and adopt resolution number 244, 2018.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented, Your Honor.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions for Bob? Okay, take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Resolution number 247, 2018, accepting the bid and awarding the contract for the 2018 upper story housing pilot project for the 300 block of East Main Street. CDVG number 18, OT001 to RG Construction. Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 247, 2018.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
We have two people in the audience who can speak to this. Is there any questions for either Brad Grief or Tyler? Okay, hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Resolution number 249, 2018, approving task order number 5 for consulting services between HDR Engineering Incorporated and the City of Ottumwa for the primary clarifier drain valve repair project. Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 249, 2018.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Good evening, Philip. Philip Bergman is our Assistant City Engineer. You're going to make some comments?
Yeah, I just want to give some background on this. HDR is the plant engineer for the wastewater treatment plant, and we keep them on call for more complex projects such as this to help facilitate the timely repair of components of the plant. And the valve replacement is not complex, but the accessibility issues are, and they have the geotechnical and structural expertise to help us with that.
Any questions for Philip? I think this is the first time we've had to use them this year.
Yes, this is the first time we've used them this year.
No further questions? Take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you, Philip.
Ordinance number 3147, 2018, amending Chapter 2 entitled Administration by deleting Section 2-445 and inserting a new Section 2-445 of the Municipal Code of the City of Ottumwa, Iowa. Recommendation passed the first consideration of ordinance number 3147, 2018.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Joni, are you going to take that one?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. State law provides that Civil Service Commission members have a 4-year term. And this law changed back in 1998. And I have not been able to determine that an ordinance change was done at that time reflecting the change in the state law. At that time, all of the Civil Service Commission members' terms were changed to 4 years rather than 6-year terms. And they've been 4 years ever since, but it doesn't conform with our city code. So this basically changes it to be in compliance with what we're actually doing and in compliance with state law. So I'm requesting that this change be done and requesting so we can get this taken care of, waiving the second and third considerations.
Okay. Any questions for Joni? Take the roll on the Part A.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Waive the second and third consideration, pass and adopt ordinance number 3147, 2018.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Ally. Any questions for Joni? Okay, take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Very good. With your permission, I would ask if there's any comments from the public on any item that doesn't have to be on the agenda necessarily. Okay. Then I would like to make a couple of comments. I think, as you know, we have been looking at the CIP, and I think as we work with Bob J., our city finance director, we're going to have some real challenges ahead. So I'm going to ask that you all look at the material he gives you and get those comments back to Bob and to Andy so we can really sharpen our pencils this year. It's going to be tough to do everything that we're wanting to do versus what we can afford to do. Secondly, I also would like to recognize Councilwoman Holly Berg. She completed the MLA, which is the Municipal Leadership Academy, and received her pin this week. And that takes additional study and classes, and it's a real tribute. And it says our council is interested, and I think Mr. Dalby is also a member of that elite group. So it's nice to have council take that extra time and energy to stay on top of issues that come up. Lastly, I plan to, at this point, unless you tell me otherwise, I plan to attend the National League of Cities meeting in November. And I think the State League will help with some of those expenses. So if you have some particular topics, I've already talked with Andy about a couple of them. And I think if you have a particular interest in some topical area, I'd be glad to share the agenda with you, and we'll try to bring back some information both for any individual council, but for the community as a whole too. So that's in the first week of November. Is there any other comments from council, or are there any other issues that we should be paying attention to? I think looking at the clock, there's still time for some of you to get to the Rotary Chicken Barbecue, which is being held at Bridgeview. I've been smelling that aroma since about 4 o'clock this afternoon, and in recognizing Councilman Dalby is the president of Rotary this year, and he is over there working very hard, so that's why he's absent tonight. Thank you, Councilman Rowe. Sorry about that. Sorry, Mark. Anything else for the good of the council? If not, I entertain. Oh, I do want to make one other comment. Chief, we had a training this past month on human trafficking. It was put on by a young woman from the Iowa Police Academy and our own Lieutenant Bell, and Councilman Rowe and Dalby were both in attendance, and I think it was a good program. We learned a lot, and I think, as the chief said, we have no more of a problem here than we have in other communities, but it's something our staff is well trained on, and I give the chief and the lieutenant credit for having that sponsored here in the excuse me, in the Ottumwa community. So, any other comments? Okay, hearing none, I entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
And I have 6:20.